Are you applying to a top university in the next few months? If so, there's this one word and this one idea that I want you to remember. Hi, my name is Joaquin Ravello. I'm a current UPenn Wharton dual degree engineering student, and I make these videos to help students that I work with, as well as my siblings, get into their top university and achieve success in high school and in college and for the rest of their life. All right, so I'm going to get right into this as I do with these videos. I like to just give you the content right away. The phrase, so to say, that you must remember in the word. There's one word in particular, all right? And this phrase is something that I actually live up to every single day, and I get reminded of it to continue to pursue excellence. And that phrase is the following, all right? Be ruthless. If you've seen the show Vikings, you likely know where this comes from. This comes from Ragnar Lothbrok, which is one of the famous Viking or legendary Viking leaders who raided one of the raids in Paris. Long story short, the main word here is ruthless. Be ruthless. This is especially important in the last few months before you apply to university. All right. Because I know how it's like having all the assignments, having all the applications to fill out, all these different wow factors, tests, scores, and the rest of it. It becomes most students become swamped. They become inundated with everything that they have to do. So I want you to remember this phrase, be ruthless. All right. What exactly does this mean? All right, it comes down to a few things. The first of which is the ability to say no to things that don't matter. Steve Jobs had this very important saying, and I'm going to read it out loud right here. It's the following: deciding what not to do is just as important as deciding what to do. And that's by Steve Jobs. Focus is the ability to not do the things that you might be tempted to do or the things that other people are telling you to do, and instead to focus in on the things that truly matter. When it comes to the last few months of university, the biggest mistake I see students make, and I was making this mistake for a while too, is trying to do absolutely everything. Trying to do everything is a foolish strategy. In fact, if you look at the top performers, the most productive people, the most productive students, they have specific systems in mind that work in their life that actually allow them to still be successful while not doing everything. And this is especially important as a student in the last few months where every single minute matters, every single day matters, every single choice you make gets you closer and closer and closer to that cutoff where eventually you send over your application for top universities. And in those moments, it becomes crucial for you to understand the things you need to do, number one, and more importantly, the things you need to not do, the things you should stop doing so that you have the time to pursue excellence and the things that make the largest impact on your goals. All right. And that's where the phrase be ruthless comes in. Be ruthless in cutting away the tasks that truly don't matter. Be ruthless in saying no to a lot of solicitations on your time. Maybe it's through extracurriculars that no matter how much time you spend on them, I like to call these sinks, no matter how much time you spend on these extracurriculars, these these do not in any way contribute to your common application or do not contribute to your end results that the university sees, right? And I see many people fall into this trap where they have a club or science club or pep club or something like that, this type of club that they have, and they keep spending time into it. However, that club, regardless of how much time they spend into it, that effort is not directly reflected in the results they see on their Common App and on the resume that they end up sending to the university. So as a result, that club in many ways becomes a sink for their time. And you need to remember that time and attention are your two most valuable resources, and they're your two most limited resources as well. Every single person has the same amount of time. Every single person has the same 24 hours per day. And as a student, your time is running out because you're eventually going to end up applying very shortly. So time and attention, because you can't multitask, time and attention are your two most valuable resources. So stop spending it on tasks that do not in any way reflect to the overall application that your university admissions, the university admissions counselor will end up seeing, right? The admissions officer, excuse me. If you're doing a task that is not reflected and they do not notice and take note of, you need to stop doing it. Okay. So this is my challenge to you today. Okay. And it's the following: start cutting down on the tasks that no longer contribute to your success in university. start cutting away a lot of the things that just genuinely don't matter in the final output that the admission officer sees. The best example I can give you is that I was in science club, and I would spend a lunchtime every single week working on science club. However, regardless of how much time I spent, that time was not reflected on the general application. So I ended up wasting a lot of time that I could have spent working on my final projects, working on grades, and working on other things. If you have more time, meaning let's say you're applying in a year to universities, or 2 years or 3 years, you can start thinking of this more strategically from you can start thinking of this more strategically sooner in the process. So rather than asking yourself, all right, I have 3 months left, how can I cut everything away? You can start to ask yourself, what periods of time during the next 3 years can I spend focusing on only one or two of my extracurriculars, build those up such that I have some sort of results that I can put onto my application or write into an essay and then show to the admission officer. How can I chunk that up into specific periods of time during the next 3 years that will give me the most results? And you also need to remember that, yes, high school is a time to explore. I'm not saying don't explore. But what I am saying is that students who are able to focus in on one to two things during a set period of time. So let's say you focus only on one extracurricular for 3 to 4 months. Those tend to be the students who are able to get, I want to say, exponential results with those materials. Why is that? It's because success in many ways is not linear. It's exponential. What exactly do I mean by that? I mean that the more time you end up spending on a certain topic, right, in a prolonged period of time, especially if it's the one thing that you're doing, your overall results is not a line, but rather an exponential curve. And the best example I can give is if you think of top golf, just top golfers or top people in any sort of field, any sort of industry, you realize that by the time they reached top 10, the amount of paid money or the amount of attention they got or the amount of trophies they ended up winning went up exponentially. So from going from last, like let's say you're very bad at golf, all the way to 10th, that is a pretty small increase in trophies, right? 10th place, you're not going to get that much trophies. But if you go from 10th place to 5, notice that the increase in quote unquote standing is just a fraction of the overall increase you've done during your entire career. But that fraction from 10th to 5th has huge impacts on your overall earning, on your overall rewards, and on your overall success. And then if you take that further, if you go from 5th to 3rd, 3rd to 2nd, 2nd to 1st place overall, you realize you get actually exponential results. So one of the biggest things I see, if you have more time, this is again, if you have more time, if you have, let's say, 2, 3 years, is to spend periods of time focusing on only one thing so you can reach a state of mini excellence in that. And remember, you can actually achieve a lot in 3 months. And if you do 3 months for 3 years and you kind of chunk it up into this place where you want to focus on certain extracurricular activities for not the entire time, but just really focus it on it as the one thing you're working on for, let's say, 3 months, you'll be surprised actually at how much you're able to achieve. Now, going back to the overall topic here, which is applying to college in the next 3 months, remember this. I want you truly to remember to be ruthless with your time and your attention. Only focus your attention and your time on the most valuable activities, obviously. While this might seem obvious, most people don't end up doing it. And I think this is a case of to remind yourself to be more careful of how you spend your time. Because what ends up happening in the last 3 to 4 months before you apply to college is a lot of things. First of all, students get distracted. When things are tough, when days look bleak, when they're working all day, they tend to spend huge amounts of time just screwing around, and you might not even notice it, but instead of sitting down and doing focused work, it's much more tempting to go on YouTube or to screw around playing video games or get distracted by something else. Why? Because it's much more stressful. You have a lot of things going at it. It can be overwhelming. Because of that, students tend to go towards distractions. And I used to be one of those students. So keep that in mind. Distraction is one of the biggest things. The other biggest thing that could happen, and this is a form of distractions, is that you start to do tasks that are easy. You start to get complacent in many ways and start doing simple and easier tasks. And the biggest thing to note here is that while these might be tasks, right? While they might be pieces of work to do. For example, go into science club. I can justify that as work that will help me get towards a top university. However, you need to understand that that is low value work. While it might be easy, while it might be fun, the overall results that give you is basically nothing in this case, or is very little. And what ends up happening is that students, in many ways, justify their work through low value tasks. So they, in many ways, trick themselves into thinking that they're doing productive work, that they're getting things done. When in reality, those tasks should not have been done at all. They should have just straight up avoided them. And they would have had all that time to work on the actually difficult tasks that contribute the most to their final output. So keep that in mind. That is a form of distraction. Do not do easy things just because they're easy and fun. Instead, do the hard but necessary tasks that you know will give you the most output. Okay? And then the third part of this is to say no to a lot of pulls on your attention from other people. There's a lot of people who are going to ask for your time, a lot of things going on. I remember when I was in grade 12, the first 3 months up until I got accepted ED, I believe it was in December. So I made my application in November. I got accepted in December. The first 3 to 4 months, I basically had absolutely no social life. Okay. And that was probably one of the best things I could have done because I ended up getting into my top choice at the business school of Wharton. So I'm pretty happy that it happened that way. I feel like if I was more on the nice side and I said yes to a lot of the things that were going on, it would have been very easy to lose track of my goals, of my productivity, and ultimately of my focus. And the funny part of all of this is that I don't feel like I missed out on anything because you need to remember that once you do get accepted, life just becomes so much easier. It becomes so simple moving forward. And I found that a lot of the things that I ended up missing out on, right, supposedly, I was able to, in many ways, do more of later because I felt like I had this debt that I missed out on that I had to repay. So I actually spent more time hanging out with my friends. I spent more time going to these events. I spent more time doing a lot of the grad planned activities. And because of that, I had more fun and I truly enjoyed that experience while also being stress free. Does this mean that you should not rest? Absolutely not. Rest and recovery is essential. All I'm saying is to be very careful of what you say yes to and what you say no to. A lot of students end up justifying themselves, again, misleadingly, that they need to say yes to a lot of these events because they'll miss out on the experience or whatnot. All right. Have that perspective in mind. And I promise you, once you do get in, which I strongly believe if you're watching this video, if you found this video, you have extraordinary potential in you. You can then enjoy those things later. All right. So that's all I want to say. I'm not going to keep talking anymore because I want you to get this content, go out, apply it into your own life, and then get the results. All right. So I want you to seriously get off YouTube, write this down right here. Be ruthless. All right. Be ruthless with your time. Be ruthless with your priorities. Be ruthless with your distractions. Be ruthless with what you say yes and no to. And ultimately, remember that focus comes not from doing the things that are important to do, but from saying no from the things that are unimportant to do, right? The difference between the successful and the unsuccessful, especially as a student, is that the successful just doesn't do the things that the unsuccessful person does. So there's a lot of things that the successful person just says no to. And then they do a lot of the things, or they do only the things that are the most important. And for the most part, the successful and the unsuccessful person are actually doing the same thing. The only thing is that the successful person does the most important things more times than the unsuccessful person. And because of that, he's able to, or they're able to reap those rewards, right? So keep that in mind, stay ruthless, and until next time, stay productive. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.